Hello everybody and welcome back to the free online woodworking school where we aim to take your woodworking skills to the next level. In today's video, we're going to get this thing pre-sanded, pre-finished and glued. Let's get going. So I don't think I've looked forward to finishing a piece of material as much as I am today. This is going to look absolutely mental when there's a finish applied to it. Why are we doing it now? The reason is it's going to be very difficult to get into these corners with a sander after this thing is assembled because the panel's slightly set back, and also the internal edges of the frame, they are going to be visible somewhat. We want to make sure those are completely cleaned up, and when there's a finish on it, if we get any glue squeeze out, we don't want to be trying to pick it out of these corners with a chisel. If this is pre-finished, we should just be able to get in there with a knife or something and just pop off the glue, and then we ain't got to worry about it. So lots of reasons to do this now. It's definitely worth taking the time out to pre-sand and pre-finish before gluing it up because it'll save you a load of effort down the road. So firstly, I want to focus on arrising the internal corners of the frame because at the moment they're feeling a little bit rough, a little bit chippy, and if we just take that edge off, it'll be much nicer. Now these rails at the top and bottom of the door are very easy. We can just sand that internal edge and be done with it. The stiles, however, if we round that internal edge with sandpaper and it goes beyond this joint line, we're going to get a shadow gap, or just a disgusting gap for that matter, in that joint line. So I'm going to quickly just put on a pencil mark on each stile on both sides at both ends to ensure that when I just take the edge off that internal corner, I don't end up going into the joint area. So I'll just give it a few passes with some 180 grit. And then also give those inside faces a little bit of a sand. Bit of 240. Same again on the face. Subtle bit of rounding on the corner. Very subtle. We're not making this thing look like a pillow though. Next we'll just do the tongue on the panel. This isn't too bad, but when I was shoulder planing this chamfer, there's kind of an area of burnished wood where the metal was rubbing on it. It's not damaged or anything, it's just a bit glazed over. So I want to get rid of that, make it all even in there. So for this, I've got some 240 wrapped around a hard 90-degree edge, and that's allowing me to get right into that corner and clear it up a bit. Right, then we're going to use a random orbit sander to clean up these faces. I really want to make sure I don't pull out that lead shot when I'm sanding this, so I've turned the suction of the extractor right down to the lowest setting that I know can still extract through this abrasive netting. Any lower, it might start kicking out dust, but by reducing that suction, it prevents the sander from being pulled down into the surface too much, thus reducing more material and being more likely to pull this out as well. This is something we do when sanding veneered panels because it's really, really thin and you don't want the sander being pulled through the veneer. So turning down the suction is very useful in situations like this. Let's see what it looks like. Right, so then we'll just put a little bit of finish on the inside faces of the stiles and rails because it'll be difficult to get a nice clean finish in here after everything's assembled. Might as well do it now. And I'm using those boundary lines that I penciled on before just to ensure I don't get any glue in the actual joint area itself. Right, so I've just got that propped up on two pieces of wood that are resting on the tongue so that if there is anything weird happening with the finish, at least it will happen within that tongue area and probably won't be seen. So we're going to leave that for a day and then come back tomorrow, apply another layer, let that dry, and then I might do a coat of wax over that just to properly resist any glue squeeze out from sticking that thing in place because that'll really cause some issues. Right, so we meet again a few days later, and this panel now has 2 coats of Osmo on it and 1 coat of wax. I specifically have used microcrystalline wax because I have that there, but to be honest, any type of paste wax will be absolutely fine for this. It's just there to resist the glue from sticking to it. I've also done a coat of Osmo and a coat of wax on the inside faces of the stiles and the rails, because again, any squeeze out that happens, specifically in the corners, is a bit of a pain to clean up, and it's a lot easier if you've got the wax there to resist it, and you can literally just pick it off with a ruler or a chisel or something. Just make sure that when you're doing the inside faces, you don't go into that joint area, because we obviously don't want the glue resisting there. Don't worry if it ends up in the groove itself, like that part isn't going to be glued, it's just the corners that are glued, and then that panel will be floating in there with no glue holding it in place whatsoever. So for this, we're obviously going to do a dry fit before putting any glue on it whatsoever. And you'll probably also want a pair of winding sticks or just something to check that you haven't got any twist in the door. So let's get it all assembled. And don't worry about getting the panel perfectly central at this point, just get it in there for now. And then light clamping pressure, literally just enough to close up the gaps and nothing more. If you over tighten them, you may end up introducing a twist into the door. Looks to be pretty good. Can't see any twist in that. And if there was a twist, you may end up having to sort of tweak these clamps slightly. Maybe if this side was low, kind of angle that up in the clamps there while also pushing this down. You may even need to clamp the clamps themselves down into the workbench, because just by angling them up, that clamp, because it's so lightweight, will just be floating up like this. So if you pull that down to the bench, that should help level out the door as well. And if it's really twisted, you're going to have to go back and have a look at the tenons and the mortises themselves. Chances are a tenon will be off at an angle, a mortise will be off at an angle, and you're going to need to straighten it. That will obviously make it a little bit loose, and you'll have to get some sort of gap filling adhesive to assemble the door afterwards. For example, epoxy with some sort of thickening agent would be ideal. Microfibers is what I tend to use. Okay, so I've disassembled the door and we're ready to start doing the glue up. By the way, with this, you might notice that I haven't actually numbered the panel with the corresponding corner, which is something I recommend you do. For example, I've got joint A here. Get some sort of masking tape or something, because obviously this panel's finished, and write on the masking tape itself which corner it corresponds with. Or in fact, you could just do it on the edge of the door or something like that. Because if you've been practicing it one way and then all of a sudden in the actual glue up, you do it round this way and something changes, you're not going to know what it is. So make sure you've got the same face up, the corners correspond to the corners of the joints every time you do a dry fit and the actual glue up. I've got the lead shot here, which I know is in the top corner of A, which is why I haven't done any markings on here. All right, so there you go. That is the door glued together. So in the next video, we're going to be planing it flush, plane it to fit in the cavity of the cabinet, and start thinking about hinging it. Obviously for this, you're going to be waiting a lot between those coats to dry. You've got the first coat of Osmo or whatever you happen to choose, the second coat, and then the third coat of wax. In between that, I would suggest skipping forward a little bit in this series and perhaps just getting started on the drawer. You don't need the door fitted to fit a drawer, so go ahead and do that. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please do not forget to press the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.